It finished last night, but it's something that I really like, and I'm going to ask both of you about this in principle. When you really like a particular writer and you like the work of a writer, and then you go along and you see something and you're disappointed, has that happened to either of you? Peter?
Yes. I mean, if we're talking about film,
it doesn't matter. Yeah. I'm just talking about in print, because I went along expecting this to be as good as everything else that I'd seen of a particular writer, and I ended up being disappointed, and that's what I'm getting at.
Well, you're always going to have a personal response, an idiosyncratic reaction to something. So, people will have different opinions.
Well, I'm trying to remember On Sondhi. Who's the writer? I've gone blank. Do you remember the film? I thought that was my film of the year, On Sondhi, or Incendies, as some people call it.
Oh, yes. Is that Denis Villeneuve?
Yeah, it is. Denis Villeneuve. Well done. Now, okay. So, I mean, I saw On Sondhi. It blew me away. One of the finest films I've ever seen, and I mean that. Just incredible, just really disturbing, but brilliantly done. And he built an expectation in me. Now he's lived up to that for me. But Dave, what about you? What about your experiences in the same regard?
Yeah, look, I have favourite writers and favourite directors, and yeah, occasionally they'll do
let you down?
Yeah, sometimes like novelists are a big one for me. I love Alex Garland as a novelist. I've actually travelled to different countries just because he's written about it in a book, and I've wanted to see it for myself. And yeah, every now and then he delivers a dud of a book or a screenplay. So yeah, I've been there.
Well, okay, I'm talking about Everyman and His Dog at TheatreWorks Explosives Factory. There's 2 TheatreWorks. This is the new one, and the biggest problem with Explosives Factory is that it's cavernous, and there's only a few. I mean, it's relatively small in terms of number of seats, but there's no tiering whatsoever. So in other words, if you're sitting behind somebody and another person, it's hard to see the people on stage, right? That I've always thought is a bit problematic. Anyway, you've got Dr. John Everyman, because it's Everyman and His Dog, played by Dennis Cord, a retired, much-loved GP, lost his wife, Sophia, when she was just 59. And she was taken away 13 years ago. He hasn't been able to fill that void. To this day, he rages at God for the theft of his beloved wife. He calls it an act of divine spite. And he met his wife when they were both at school, right? So they were school kids together. His overarching philosophy in life is to do no harm. And yet he acknowledges the only way that can be fulfilled is not to care. So John has never been a dog person. Still, 6 months after the traumatic episode with Sophia, one of his 3 children gifted him a golden retriever. The animal was to have been a guide dog. It failed to make the grade because the dog was too affectionate, too easily distracted, and too easy to please. This animal is known only as Dog, and he's been a companion for John ever since, although John's still unsure how he really feels about the canine. John's narrative is about life with all its vicissitudes, about his wife, his dog walker, the happier moments and the concerning ones. Although it is essentially a sad tale, the script by Ron Elisha includes amusing episodes. Elisha himself maintains that due to certain childhood experiences, he's always been somewhat standoffish with dogs. And as I said at the outset, although I'm usually a big fan of Elisha, I found Everyman and His Dog hard going. It lacked spark. I thought the 60 minutes was largely laboured and mundane. I really struggled with it. I mean, who wants to hear about everyday life as it's presented here? While lots of words are spoken, as much as I wanted to be, I just was not engaged. And although the play did pick up a tad in the last act, I didn't care enough about what I was seeing and hearing. The production needed to grab me early on. It did not. I was bored, and I frequently looked at my watch. That's a really bad sign, especially when it's only 60 minutes. The pacing was too slow throughout. The direction was from Denny Lawrence. On stage with actor Cord was this beautiful-looking dog. I am a dog person. That dog was meant to stay still for most of the play. Frequently it didn't. Mind you, asking a pooch to stay put for that length of time with people all around it, Well, boy, oh boy, is that challenging. I mean, I reckon they could have done this without a dog. They could have referred to the dog without the dog being there. It almost became a prop. And as for Cord, he was personable, he tried hard, but forgot his lines more than once. He stumbled over a few words here and there. He was also too softly spoken. I mentioned the cavernous nature of the Explosives Factory. It made him hard to hear on occasions. At the start of the play, the noise of the heating all but drowned him out until that heater was turned off. And I'm not kidding. And at various junctures, the rain on the roof didn't help either. So it should have been at a different venue. In summary, Everyman and his dog needed tightening and more compelling anecdotes from Ron Elisha. I regard it as a work in progress that could be vastly improved. As I mentioned, it finished last night. I wanted to mention it simply because, I suppose I'm being more savage about this than I usually am with my reviews, but it just turned me off, and that's disappointing. So, I don't know what more I can say. I really like Ron Elisha as a writer, and I think he's capable of re-engineering this with stronger anecdotes and making it something that is well worth seeing. So there you go. And, I mean, anything else that you guys can add to my experiences about disappointment with regards to any production? Anything that you want to say, Dave?